Crystal is going to speak to us on the pursuit of work-life balance. So I'm really looking forward to hearing that. Anyway, she currently serves as the Executive Operations Director for Calvary Church at the main campus. She is a follower of Christ, a wife, and a mother of 5 young children. You look so young to have 5 young children. What are the ages of your kiddos?
They're 8, 6, 4, 2, and 7 months.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, good for you.
Thank you.
She has a passion for supporting women in achieving their God-directed goals. And here she
There
is.
you go. All right. Hello. Hi. A few familiar faces. A little confessional to start out here. It's really funny. So about 3 weeks ago. Yeah. I was going to say, wait, what is it? So about 3 weeks ago, or whenever it was that I spoke to Susan, and she had asked me to come in and speak, and I, stated or said, okay, I'll do work-life balance because it's a pursuit. It's something that I actively work for frequently. My life fell apart with my work-life balance. In the last 3 weeks, it has been out of control. And that just goes to show the enemy is real. When we make a declaration, we're going to speak about something that can impact somebody's life for the purpose of Christ. We get people that knock on our door, and the enemy kind of has that spiritual warfare thing going on. But the blessing of it, it has given me a lot of time to consider, what do I want to speak on in regards to it, because it is a real life challenge that I seek and I visit on daily. So as Susan said, I'm a mother of 5 younger kiddos. My oldest is 8. My youngest is 7 months. Breakup. My oldest is a girl, and then the other 4 are boys. And so that's kind of my home life, what it looks like. I have a loving husband that's very helpful. It's teamwork to get life done, and he's really wonderful, but has a career of his own as well. I've been in Albuquerque for about 13 years now, actually. I did my undergraduate in business administration, master's in business administration, organizational behavior, and leadership. And I want to share a little bit about my story so you can kind of follow the progression of why work-life balance is near and dear to me. And then I'll talk about some practical applications in regards to that. So prior to moving here, working in human resources is where I started my career. And I was about 24, and I remember having a conversation with my now husband. We had just started dating. He lived in Albuquerque, I lived in Buffalo, New York, and he asked me kind of about my career. I was an HR director for an organization. I had 4 sites throughout the country and about 3,500 employees. And I told him, well, I'd like to be a vice president by the time I hit 30 for a larger organization. I'd like to get my, master's degree before having children. It's okay if it's after marriage, so on and so forth. And then when we got engaged, he made some sort of a passing comment. Well, if you don't want to work, you don't have to. If you'd like to stay at home, you're more than welcome to make that choice. And I looked at him, I said, you are crazy. Do you not know the woman that you're marrying? Right? In the first conversation, I said I wanted to be a vice president by the time I was 30. And that was kind of my trajectory and my goal and my path. And kid number 1, that didn't change it. I was working for Lockheed Martin at the time as a program manager, traveling frequently. Kid number 2 didn't change that. And then he hit about a year old, and I started feeling a tug of saying, uh-oh, am I doing the right thing here? My walk with Christ was growing. I was getting closer to the Lord. I was listening to His voice more. And I started softening regarding where did I want my career to go. And then I decided at that point to go part-time and to work about 30 hours per week, which I was lucky that my employer agreed to allow that to happen. child number 3 came, and I was home on maternity leave, and even at part-time was not really part-time. My center that I oversaw was 365 days a year from 5 a.m. until 10 p.m. at night. So I would work during the day, come home, be with the kids, put the kids to bed, and then work until about midnight. Start at 6 a.m. the next morning because my customer was on the East Coast. So that's kind of the schedule that I maintained. So while at home with number 3 on maternity leave, I looked at my husband and I said, I'm going to go back to work, but I think we need to start considering potentially a career change for me because I don't think I'm giving enough to the kids. I'm feeling very torn. And even when I'm at home, I'm not at home. And the week before I was scheduled to go back from maternity leave, I got a call from Calvary Church asking if I would be interested in a human resource management position. And I absolutely would love to interview for that. And Maria was actually in on that interview at the time. And I remember having the conversation and stating, I think it's a time for me to refocus my career. I still wanted to work, but I wanted to do it in a way that I could honor my family and at the time take a step back. Career needed to be backseat, and I would only be available to work in the office 3 days a week. God was so faithful in allowing me to join the Calvary Team. And since joining that team, again at Lockheed I was doing operations for business. I kind of evolved, went into the operations director position, and then I joined the executive team almost 2 years ago now, and I serve with Neil Ortiz and Nate Heitzig on the executive team overseeing business operations. So, that includes anything from any of our retail like SoPo and the bookstore, and then also the business strategy. How are we as a church strategizing business to make sure that we don't impede ministry, yet we maximize ministry. And just when I had baby number 5 and came back from maternity leave this past June, our accounting director, who was new, said to me, he said, do you feel like you're still doing or balancing your work and your life? And so with that question in mind, I'm going to kind of start diving into things, and I will flesh out why I feel as though it is possible to obtain a work-life balance, but I use very intentionally the word pursuit because it is something that you have to seek after all the time. It is very much like our walk in faith. You have to be intentional about it. Our relationships, you have to be intentional in. This is one of those as well. Slippery slopes occur very easily, and so it's one of those things that we need to make intentional decisions on. It is going to look different for everyone, so I'm telling you my story so you can know what it looks like for me. It may not look the same for each person. It's different based on person. It'll be different based on whatever season of life you're in. It can be different based on generation. Each generation has different norms that are established just based on the societal influences that occur in the times at which we're being brought up. So with all of that in recognition, there are kind of 3 areas that I wanted to dive into a little bit more. One is the personal aspect of it. What is the personal pursuit of work-life balance look like? What is the job aspect of it? How can we pursue that practically in a professional environment? And then third, home. As we pursue it, how does that affect our home lives? So when I think of personal, in 2003 there was a movie called Mona Lisa Smile. I'm not sure if anybody saw that movie. This movie is interesting to me personally because number one, it justified my pursuit of the time, I'll say feminist, not in a bad way, but my feminist pursuit of wanting to be a VP by whatever timeline I put in place, right? Or number two, it also justified my step back in my career. So there's one conversation, just to put the setting a little bit. So you have a professor in the 50s who taught at a higher education, a college, that was influencing women to not waste their education, right? It wasn't just a place to meet your next husband, meet your husband, a waiting room so that you can then go and be at home. This is a place that you can enrich yourself, you can have a career, you can pursue that. We do not have to be stay-at-home spouses, right? But towards the end, she has a conversation with a character named Joan. And Joan decided she was a very gifted student wanting to be an attorney. And at the end, the professor, Julia Roberts, finds out that she decided to not pursue her career and to stay at home. And so Joan says, "Do you think I'll wake up one morning and regret not being a lawyer?" And Catherine, who's a professor, says, "Yes, I'm afraid that you will." And Joan says, "Not as much as I'd regret not having a family, not being there to raise them. I know exactly what I'm doing, and it doesn't make me any less smart. This must seem to." Joan then says, "Sure you did. You always do. You stand in class and you tell us to look beyond the image, but you don't. To you, a housewife is someone that you sold her soul for a Center Hall colonial. She has no depth, no intellect, no interest. You're the one who said I could do anything I wanted, and this is what I want." Why that resonates with me and why that movie so resonated with me is that you have the ability to choose the pursuit. And whatever that pursuit is, professionally and in your home life, does not change who God made you to be if you were doing it in step with God's direction. You can be stay at home. You can be in the workplace. You can do a hybrid of both. You can have your side gig that you do while you stay at home. Whatever that case may be, it does not change what God made you to be or thinks of you, right? And so much of what Lenya was talking about is he thinks highly. It matters what he thinks of you, not the societal norm. So I had to battle the image of potentially sacrificing my career to be at home part-time with my children. And then I was asked by a coworker at Lockheed, "Are you really throwing away your career to go work at a church?" So for me, that thought of, am I in alignment with what God wants me to do, number one, and then societally, who do I need to answer to in regards to what I'm doing with that career? And just the perceptions that we balance. So the first point that I wanted to talk about in regards to the personal aspect, sorry, it's printed both pages here. Are you listening to God's voice? When you're going to define your work-life balance, the first thing to do is to ask God, what does that look like? I just heard a speaker say the word balance and work-life balance is misleading because we consider a balance of having equal parts to make something stay. So that would mean if I work a day, I should have a day off in order to be balanced, right? And that's not the way that it works, right? Some of us can be rejuvenated in a matter of an hour. Some of us can be rejuvenated after 1 week's vacation, and that gets us through the next 6 months of the grind, whatever that looks like. So a better word that was utilized is establishing your work-life rhythm, right? And what does that rhythm look like? Doing it without God's direction is merely placing your goals, societal pressures, friendship pressures, whatever those external influences are, in defining what you're after. I encourage you to listen to God first. And if He has somebody in your life that wants you to hear God first, that will encourage you and show you to listen to God first, utilize that person to help talk through weed through what you're hearing to validate, yes, this is the correct move for me, whatever that move is. Again, that move can change based on your individual circumstances. For me, it was to adjust my career path. For me, it wasn't to bulldoze, because I can be a bulldozer, right? Wasn't to bulldoze my way through my career at the expense of my family. It was to flourish and thrive in a career while honoring my family first. Those are two very different things. The other thing that God said directly to me is, you can have a career if you obey the guidelines that I have in place for you. For me, the guidelines are the work hours that I expend. So when I say I'm a part-time employee working 30 hours per week, I am indeed working 30 hours per week. I'll go into the job side of things on how that's attainable, but on the personal side of things, listening to God's guidelines. When I am out of whack with that, everything suffers, including my work, not just my family. So understanding what boundaries He has in place for you, I believe to be very important in establishing the personal side. And again, I think that can be different for everybody. So my answer to my coworker when I just had this baby is, do you believe you're still in balance with that? Was exactly that. As long as I follow His guidelines, He has blessed my ability to work. I took a step back in my career to be an HR manager, working 30 hours per week. After baby number 4, this does not make sense unless it is God's math. I come back from maternity leave and they say, would you like to be the director of operations? Well, yes, I would like to be. You're all familiar with me. Here are what this is what my availability is. Do you want me to do that role knowing that these are my constraints? Yes, we do. Okay, so I'm going to obey that. I am going to move forward in this role. Year later, would you like to join the executive team at the church in doing this? And I said, are y'all crazy? You know I have 4 children at the time, and I can only work part-time. I'm not available to work 40 hours per week. Yes, we want you on the team. That doesn't make sense unless it's God's movement. And the honest conversation of saying, if this movement isn't where you want me to be in my career, you can take it away at any time. I'm serving you. I am serving my family. And if this job is not where you want me to be, please take it away. Okay, number 2 on the personal side. Guilt versus conviction. I've often said I want to publish a book called, and this is a play on words, I am not condoning the movie. Never seen it, never read the books. 50 Shades of Guilt. Because we as women are really good at finding guilt. Very good. Whether it's as being a spouse, as a parent, a friend, a professional, we are really good at finding guilt. I think there are 2 different motives for guilt. One being from the enemy, telling us lies. The other being a deep-seated conviction that the Holy Spirit is trying to tell us something to have a behavior modification. You need to find where that sense of guilt is coming from. Is it a result of comparison or competition? I'll give a couple of examples. The picture board that I allowed my son to take to school in first grade to tell about himself, because he was Star Student of the Week, was by any Pinterest standard terrible. And I can't tell you how many posts of moms doing similar things, and the boards were beautiful. I felt guilty for a minute. Did I not give him enough time, my time, to do this board? And then I sat down, I thought about it, and I prayed about it. You know what? He did 100% of that board with me sitting with him, but it was 100% him. It wasn't arts and craft hour for mom. It was 100% him. Where did my guilt come from? That wasn't the Holy Spirit trying to have a behavior modification for me. That was a comparison that I put on myself and believed lies that the enemy told me. Okay? Know where your guilt versus conviction lies. Here's another conviction. I'm not praying enough. I'm not praying enough in my work-life balance. Guess what? I had to modify a behavior because that was stemming from a place of conviction. The Holy Spirit telling me, Crystal, you need to talk to me more. You can't listen if we don't have a relationship for me to speak into your life. Okay? So that's just a quick comparison of where I believe it can come from a place of lies and a place of truth. You need to seed through all of your guilt and figure out where is the root coming from in helping you develop the person that you need to be for that work-life balance. Okay. Last one for personal, and this one was huge for me. Find peace in your season. Everything is a season of life. And I am finding peace and rest in a season with young children that require physical, mental, and spiritual support from me almost all day long. That means I can't go to the gym. That means I can keep my hobbies, but they have to be hobbies that are sustainable for the family, right? And so finding peace with your season of life, knowing that it is indeed a season, and embrace what it is. Because what your work-life balance looks like today, it may not look like 10 years from now. Okay, I want to move on to the next piece, just so I can stay on point in time here. Okay, the next thing is career. What are some practical things we can do in our jobs that help us pursue work-life balance? Part of why I believe I've been able to maintain some work-life balance is because it is imperative to be an employee worth having, right? So number one, develop a critical skill or skills. Every single job that you are in, you are going to develop some sort of skill or skills. I don't care whether it is an entry-level position, working in a drive-through, as a barista, in a child care facility, whatever the case may be, you are going to develop skills. The most important thing that you can do is identify what is a transferable skill. What can I take from this job that betters me, that will make me even better for the next job? I talk to the barista staff frequently, and I say, you know what? This may be a stepping stone. This may be a part-time job that you have while you're in college, right? This may be your entrance into ministry. So wiping down the counters isn't necessarily at the top of your list. But let me tell you the value of attention to details. Let me tell you the value in intrinsic motivation to complete a job. searching for something to complete before your boss even tells you that it needs to be done. It doesn't matter where you are in your career, finding your transferable skills builds your portfolio of value to an employer. The critical skill is not specific to a single job, right? That's where that transferability is imperative. So always look for, what am I doing in my position now that is going to make me even better for what God has for me next? I never thought that managing and communicating with employees would set me up for communicating with my children. It was a transferable skill for me. And for those that have been through 5 voices that we do in Life Track, Maria has put us through it at work. I'm a pioneer, and nurture is at the bottom of my list. God must have thought it very funny to put me in human resources and then give me 5 children, right? I had no idea that he was equipping me in human resources to love on my children. But it's transferable, and vice versa. I have children now. I know far more about love and grace than I did from an employment perspective before, and now I can apply that in that direction as well. Okay, next one when it comes to career. Be respectful of all phases of the career path. What I mean by that, I will segregate it in 3 areas. We have early career, mid-career, and late career. Your early career is, for lack of a better word, it is helping you, you're going to pay your dues, right? Early career, you need to pay your dues. You need to work hard, you need to be available, you need to be flexible, you need to be willing, you need to be open, you need to be trainable, all in your early career. Be a sponge. Mid-career is defined by your ability to build influence. You broaden your influence, and I'll classify very broadly 2 career paths. You can be on the management career path, where you start being formal leaders in regards to organizational structure, and you can become a SME, a subject matter expert, whether that's in a technical field, whether it's in a non-technical field, it doesn't matter. Management is not everybody's career path, and that's awesome. Some people are incredible SMEs, subject matter experts, that have just as much influence over peers, those in their early career, as those that are in management, supervisor, mid-level management, right? Yes, 1 minute. Okay, I will hurry then. Okay, and then late career is about building your legacy, right? So getting people, succession planning, getting people ready in order to fulfill that. Okay, next one, when it comes to being an employee, be an employee that will be missed if you are gone. Have a good attitude, be reliable, have integrity, build your skills, have an ability to communicate, right? I could talk all night about those things alone. Work to be a force multiplier. The input that you put in a job, its individual piece, is less than the output. Your output is greater because of those things that you're putting in, right? Like a hammer. I can't push a nail in, but I have a hammer. I've got a force multiplier. I'm going to be really quick on the home items, and then if anybody has questions, I'll be available. With home, here are some tips that I do in order to help me with that balance. Sorry, really quick, one more sentence on the whole work thing. Why is it important to do all of those things that I talked about? Is because it gives you the ability to negotiate your work-life balance. Be critical to an organization, and they will work with you. Be critical to your organization so that you have the ability to negotiate and set boundaries for your work-life balance. And then when you're at home, honor that work-life balance. Set appropriate boundaries, things that I do that help me set those boundaries. I have a designated time when I'm at home at which I will answer calls, read email, and respond to things. I communicate with my staff. I communicate with those that I support what an emergency is, what an emergency is not. If it's not an emergency, I will respond to you during my designated times. I do not take my phone to bed. My phone goes on Do Not Disturb at 9 p.m. It does not turn back on until 7 a.m. And I do not take it to bed. Disconnect. Force yourself to disconnect. Have a notebook, record a voice memo, set a reminder for your thoughts regarding work when you are at home, so that you can go back to it when you can give it the time that it requires without disrupting your family life. Communicate proactively with your employer and your staff regarding your availability preferences. Okay? Again, this is an emergency, this is an emergency. This is when I will be responding to emails so they don't think that I am not responding. They know exactly what to expect. Simplify. Personal things that have helped me to simplify. In order to keep my work-life balance, my life balance, I have 5 kids. I don't do Pinterest birthday parties. They each get a birthday party every other year with friends. Other than that, we celebrate birthdays with the family. I'm not posting it on Facebook. Nobody's going to see what we're doing. The kids enjoy. They don't care about the Pinterest party. That's my personal stance. It doesn't have to be yours. I'm saying it's helped me simplify. They do their own school projects, even when they don't look amazing. I also limit activities of the kids based on their age and based on the season. You can only do so many things. The family only allows for this much, and we support each other in the pursuit of what's important. The last thing is communicate with your circle that is interacting with you daily. If it's your kids, if it's your spouse, if it's your friends, if it's your roommates, communicate, i.e., hey, you know what? I'm sorry that I was just short with you. I had a rough day today. Will you please forgive me? Thanks for extending grace. That's exactly what God would want for us. Honey, I need help. I can't make dinner tonight because I'm overwhelmed. Can you help me pick something up? Don't expect that the people around you know what you just went through. Communicate with your folks. Ask for forgiveness if need be. Ask for help if need be. Don't play a martyr. Don't assume that people know that you need help. Ask and communicate. Sorry, I know I went a couple minutes over.
Okay, so good, Crystal. Yeah, thank you.
If there's any, I'll stick around for a few minutes if anybody has any
thank
questions.
you.
Or...
Yay. That was awesome.